Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will not stop crowing about last week's political stunt, flying Texas migrants to Martha's Vineyard. But he's pretty cagey about how it was done. That's probably because what reporters have uncovered is deeply problematic. State records show that his administration paid an aviation company $615,000 from the, quote, relocation program of unauthorized aliens. The payment was made by the Florida Department of Transportation, which received $12 million in state funding for the program. Again, these migrants were flown by DeSantis to Massachusetts from Texas, not from Florida, which Democrats say is a violation of state law. Meanwhile, over the weekend, the president of the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC, traveled to Massachusetts and spoke with a few of the migrants who shared similar stories of a mysterious operative named Perla who lured the migrants onto the plane with false promises of employment. LULAC is now offering a $5,000 reward for information about this woman known as Perla. Judd Legum, who writes a news Substack called Popular Info, obtained a copy of a brochure that was provided to the migrants before they boarded the planes. The brochure says that migrants who arrive in Massachusetts will be eligible for numerous benefits, including 8 months cash assistance, assistance with housing, food, clothing, transportation to job interviews, job training, job placement, registering children for school, assistance applying for Social Security cards, and many other benefits. None of which is true, because they are still in the process of seeking asylum. And moments ago in San Antonio, Texas, the Bexar County Sheriff's Department announced an investigation into the luring of those migrants. According to a sheriff, a Venezuelan migrant was paid a fee to recruit and lure those migrants under false pretenses. Joining me now is Nikki Fried, Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who recently ran for governor, and Domingo Garcia, National President of the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC. And Mr. Garcia, I do want to start with you because you've spoken with some of these migrants. Now that we have an investigation out of Texas of whether someone was paid to lure these migrants onto those planes, what do you know about that aspect of what happened?
Well, we know for sure that I talked to about 11 or 12 of those migrants at Martha's Vineyard. They were told they were going to get 3 months paid work. They were going to get free housing, free transit, free benefits. It was all a lie. And it was the terrible part about it. They actually had a map of Martha's Vineyard in the envelope along with that folder. And it said, this is refugee service. It was a parking lot at Martha's Vineyard in Edgartown. I mean, that's how mean-spirited, how sadistically cruel the governor of Florida was, and how he treated fellow human beings who are desperate, the least among us. And it was just not Christian charity at all. It was just a political game being played by the governor of Florida.
And we do know now, Mr. Garcia, that they've been moved to a federal facility. Is that correct? And that is, the right is trying to claim that that is them being ousted from Martha's Vineyard. That is not true. This is the federal government taking control of a federal situation, no?
Actually, you know, they at St. Andrew's Parish at Edgartown welcomed them. They gave them clothes, food, everything, what the Americans should do for those that are seeking refuge. And they were moved to Cape Cod because they had no housing. There's no shelters there in Martha's Vineyard. And so they put them in a military base there in barracks. They're free to go. They're not prisoners. And therefore, they're not been deported to Cape Cod. They've just been relocated. They eventually get to the destinations they actually wanted to go. One of the immigrants told me he wanted to go to Portland, Oregon. How far is it from Martha's Vineyard to Portland, Oregon? He was sent to the opposite side of the country. That's how cruel these people were.
And Nikki Fried, let me bring you in here because there's a lot to unpack here. You know, first of all, these migrants were not in Florida. They seem to have touched down in Florida, maybe as a pretext so that DeSantis could claim they were in Florida, but they came from Texas. What do you know about this aviation company? I've heard it's a flight school. Whatever it is, it has, 4 employees. What do you know about this company that received $615,000 of Florida taxpayer money?
Joy, this is actually part of the disturbing part of all of this. We know that these flights originated in Texas and they stopped in Florida to refuel. Whether or not that's the governor's way of having a nexus between that money and then being able to utilize these flights. There is something very strange going on that this entity was actually represented at some point by the law firm that is now our immigration czar, that is overseeing all of this. So as more, I actually just got off the phone with a reporter who's starting to dig in more and more on this, that there's a weird connection between this flight company that's actually out of Oregon, I think is where it's actually based out of. And so how exactly did this company receive a $615,000 of Florida's taxpayers' dollars? And so we've been asking for, obviously, the Department of Justice to get engaged on this issue, to figure out who paid for what, where this company came from. The last time I knew anything about state contracts, you have to bid to receive money from our state government. None of that was done. And so you're going to find that this company, there's going to be direct connections to the Republican Party, that just like we saw on January 6th, of who was paying for those buses out of Florida. You're going to find some really interesting connections between this company, as well as others who are well known in Florida politics, who have had their hand in the cookie jar for decades. And this is going to be just part of the unraveling that we need the Department of Justice to engage in.
And Commissioner Freed, do you know if any Florida taxpayer money was used to pay this person called Perla? Because this person is now being sought. LULAC has offered a reward for this person's identity. Do you have any information that this person was paid with Florida taxpayer dollars herself?
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out and continue to make that connection of who was this person. Was there communication between the DeSantis administration and her? Did they hire her? Was it somebody in conjunction with Greg Abbott on the ground? These are kind of one of those connecting of dots that we just don't know the answers to. But we're talking about 50 people whose lives were upended, who are trying to get, let's go back to the human story of this. These are individuals that crossed from Venezuela, that came into America for political asylum. For so many of the people down in South Florida, this is how they got here to begin with.
Yeah. Mr. Garcia, let me let you finish on that point. What did some of these folks tell you their stories were? Why did they flee Venezuela?
They're fleeing a communist dictatorship under Maduro there, who's the president of Venezuela. Terrible economic conditions. They went through swamps, through the Darien Strait, came to multiple countries. One man was kidnapped in Mexico. They pulled all his teeth from the front to pay a ransom, which he didn't have. And he only got help when he got to Martha's Vineyard. Nobody in Texas helped this man who was literally bleeding from his mouth. After the cartels got a hold of him. And it wasn't until he got to Massachusetts that he got assistance. And women with 4-month-old babies on their hands that were dumped on the sidewalk of Washington in front of Kamala Harris's house at 6 a.m. in the morning. Who does that? Who has that kind of mean-spiritedness to use people like that and babies and families like that when they are coming here for the American dream and these people are spitting the Statue of Liberty?
I'll tell you who does that. Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis and the governor of Arizona, Ducey. That's who does it. Commissioner Nikki Freed, Domingo Garcia, please keep us updated as you guys continue to try to look into who these people are. Thank you, guys.